Okay, here we are. Hello, everybody. This is Between Two Teachers. We will bring you education news from local and national and sometimes international, whatever is current right now that's happening. We bring you best practices and challenges and also some brilliant ideas. We're going to bring you those too. So today is Monday, July 11th, and my name is Consuelo Lara.
And my name is Madeline Cronenberg. And as always, I will begin today's episode with our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Huichin, part of the unceded territory of the Chochenyo and Karkan-speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region and give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland, and offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and present. And we continue to encourage all of you to support the Justice for Muwekma effort to get the Muwekma people recognized as a federal tribe. That really has to be done. There's a group of tribes that were, for a variety of reasons, excluded from being recognized as federal tribes, and they then, for no fault of their own, they're excluded from getting the privileges that you get if you're recognized as a federal tribe. So we've put that material up before, and I'll post it again. The links are on our Facebook page.
And recently on National Geographic, there was a cover about the Navajo and how many of them are reclaiming their land and their rights and their, agreements that were made and broken. And so things are happening with
the
Native American community, which is wonderful. And I finally saw those signs that you had talked about, Albany.
Yes.
These signs, good for them, shout out to them, that say Albany is on Ohlone land. So
right.
How about that?
I mean, so there's much to be said for anyone in a position to name things, like when you rename a school, or if you're on a facilities committee where you're talking about putting up plaques on schools and refurbishing any signage. All you have to do is what they did in Albany, which is create a policy that says you include on that signage a recognition of the ancestral territory of the native homeland. It's an absolute first step, right?
Yes.
And the land back movement is all over the United States and Canada, and it's growing, and it's an important thing to continue to acknowledge. But we just need to keep putting it out there. So if you're renaming a school, if you're renaming, or if you're just putting up signage, you don't need to rename something to acknowledge that it's on ancestral territory and to acknowledge that on the sign.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good practice.
Right. Okay. It is an absolute best practice. So let us talk about what is going on. I'll tell you an interesting story that I saw out of, where is this? Buckeye. And Buckeye, I think it's in Arizona. And it's just an interesting point that got made around double dipping. And this happens in Arizona. Apparently, a big percentage of their superintendents are people who've been in education long enough to have retired and be getting a pension.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, and then get hired as a superintendent, and then also get the superintendent's salary.
Okay.
Now, this is a recruitment effort because you're making a great deal of money. Yeah. Right, superintendents make six figures, and but you're also getting your retirement. And so an issue came up when it's done by many people, but it got done the way it got done, and I've seen this done in the private sector. Where somebody literally retires from their job on Friday, and gets then at that moment starts getting their retirement check and gets rehired for the same job to start Monday. And they also then get a contract.
Okay, and it's all perfectly legal.
It's perfectly legal. And the thing about it is that it's less expensive, they say, for the district, because the retirement money is coming out of the retirement fund. So they're not paying that. And they're not paying into your retirement fund because you are already retired. So what they would normally pay into the retirement fund, which is like 12%, they don't have to pay. They don't have to pay benefits because you're already getting the benefits as a retiree, if you are. But anyway, it is an interesting, it's an interesting thing, and there is a, the question is it double dipping?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, that's the question.
right? And there are people who brought it up who want to end the practice. But if you end the practice, there's a whole lot of people who are available to you to hire who are not going to give up their retirements.
No.
So anyway, that is out there. I just thought it was an interesting point that was brought up, and they wanted her to resign after she had just done this. And the other board members who became aware of this and said, no, she needs to resign. She said, no, there's many other superintendents doing the same thing. So that now in Texas, I'm just going to briefly say that there's an effort to write their own curriculum. And in Texas, they have written curriculum now, or in the process of writing it, to describe slavery as involuntary relocation.
I saw that. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? No. Boy.
That's incredible, right? It's an incredible story. Anyway, and there's pushback on that, but I'll bet you it'll probably go through.
Yeah.
Because right now Texas is very right leaning, and that is probably how they're going to describe slavery to the children of Texas.
Oh, that's horrible.
Which is why we really have to pay attention to these, who gets elected and who's serving on boards, because curriculum choices come down to, they certainly come down to local districts, but they're also at the state.
Yes. And that happens, and you're not paying any attention, and you say, oh, well, they've changed that law. So, oh boy, we got to pay attention. We'll bring it up.
Yes. So that is a Texas story. I wanted to tell a California story. I'm getting a spam call. The California story is a facility story. So right now, the big facility stories are how, because of the supply chain and inflation, facilities dollars are not stretching anywhere near what people had hoped they would. So bond measures that were passed are not going to be close to building the things that were promised. And this is where people make promises and then they can't deliver, but they have no control over that, right? Folks that are now in the process of building schools have no control over the fact that their dollars are not going to go anywhere close to what they were legitimately told they could go 5 years ago when they got together to start passing a bond measure. So that's one issue around bonds and facilities. The other one, something that played out at Linwood High School in LA. And 2 years ago, now, as during the beginning of the pandemic, when the schools were all closed, Linwood High School, which was built 20 years ago, collapsed. And thank God the school was empty and no one was hurt, because it was empty because of COVID. And the building was built on a 43-acre campus in the Linwood district in California, and the what was clearly determined is that it was a construction defect. And the company that built it, construction company, is out of business. They had been sued for other defects in the course of the original lawsuits over this 20-year period. They had waived further lawsuits. There was nobody left to sue. And this is a very, I mean, it was obviously an incredibly dangerous building, right? It reminds me of the tragedy with the condominium building in Florida, right? Where these buildings require careful inspections when they're being built.
Yeah.
Right. Besides the fact that you need people who are not cheating.
Yeah. Reputable.
Right. Because both of those things have to have happened. You can't just fall apart if you've had the inspections done, if you've had competent inspections. And so for the last year, since this happened, they had to rejigger their high school and put their children in the high school into their middle schools, and basically a very crowded situation. They didn't have the funding to rebuild it, and the state of California is providing $250 million to rebuild Linwood High School.
You have to do something to support that. Yeah.
Right. So that has happened. They had a lot of political support in Sacramento from their legislators, and that's why it is important to work with your legislators. It does matter who's on the team. That's why they're able to do that. And hopefully, I would think that the best practice has got to be to have a facilities committee.
Exactly.
That looks at what's going on, and that has people who are the inspectors come and give reports.
Yep.
So that they're public.
Yep.
Because clearly that did not happen in Linwood.
It looks like it. Yeah. No, absolutely. There's a lot of power to that, and it's necessary for there's to be a facilities committee. Oh boy.
And honestly, in this case, you look at that and you say, how could these inspectors? I mean, I understand that these guys were crooks, that they knew they were cutting corners and saving money by not building it to specs. They clearly didn't do that. So I'm not even worried about them. I'm just wondering, where are the inspectors and what else did they inspect? Were they paid off? Is that really what we're talking about? People who are paid off? Or are we talking about people who are incompetent? And I'm more worried about that. If you were incompetent, then we have to check everything you inspected.
Yeah. Sounds more like they were paid off, though.
Sounds more like they were paid off. But we don't know that.
We don't know. We don't know. It's just speculation.
We don't know. But anyway, that is the good news is it's going to be rebuilt, that they did get the $250 million to rebuild them. Then the other stories, I just wanted to do some updates on some interesting things. So the first one was the privatization update. This is Arizona. Arizona has now passed the universal voucher law, so that all families in Arizona will get their $6,500 voucher, and they can use it in any private or parochial school, and when they take their child out of a public school, or their child maybe was never in a public school, and they simply will now be eligible, because all families will be eligible.
Oh my gosh, you just look at that and there are so many things that can go wrong with that. Really? I mean, come on, you don't see any red flags with this system.
This is the system. And the thing is that since the Supreme Court did do the case support prayer in school with the football coach.
Yep.
Then that opens the door to the parochial schools.
Yeah. So they're going to get the money too. So.
In Arizona, they are. And what the thing is that there's going to be a really major decline in the number of children who are going to be in the public schools, because people are going to take this opportunity, and there'll be a big growth industry in parochial and private schools.
For sure. Absolutely.
That's what's going to happen. So there's that. in California, well, let me give, in California, the big thing that came up is, and we're going to talk about this, is the community schools. There's a lot of money now that's being dedicated to community schools in California, which is a very good thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Our district, we have a history of the community and schools. And when I went to Helms, and I remember my friend Genoveva Calloway, she was the mayor of San Pablo. The city went to conferences, I remember, in order to create that partnership of the schools that were in San Pablo and the city. And so this is a news release from Tony Thurman's office. The California State Board of Education and the state superintendent, Tony Thurman, announces first round of grants for 3 billion community schools partnerships for a $3 million community schools partnership program. And so they're expanding it. And like I said, the model is there, and it's a great model. It really is. And so what it's a wonderful idea, period. But when I look at it, I also want to look at it in terms of adult ed, which is one of our big issues that we are advocating about. So when I read this, I see it's just like adult ed just fits right in there. And I like that partnership is in one of my favorite words, partnership. But there's these pillars, and they're saying well-resourced community schools have the potential to transform students' lives and improve the well-being of families, thus uplifting entire communities. Again, I hear adult ed fitting right in with that.
Right. In fact, that is the thing, because adult ed, what happens is sometimes people think of adult ed as just the individual single adult who wants to learn some additional, they want to learn French or they want to learn Italian, and that's fine. And there are adult ed classes for that and for health as well. But another big area of adult ed, in addition to that, and those are very fair things to be included in adult ed, but there also are classes for parents, for parenting, and for language acquisition for parents, and classes that can be taught at elementary schools for the parents of the elementary school students. That is the perfect example of community schools.
Yeah, we need those, and it's so convenient. There you go to the school where your child is for these classes, whether it's ESL, your GED, citizenship classes, job training classes, all kinds of things.
And so, even babysitting available for young moms who have younger children, so that if you have young children and you bring your kindergartner or first grader to school, you have somebody, you can take a class for a couple of hours. Someone will watch your baby, let's say, someone will watch your baby while, or your toddler, while you're in a class learning English and learning parenting skills.
Exactly. And here's a statement from Mr. Thurman I really like. This investment will ensure that our campuses will become resource hubs for our neighborhoods, and that our families and educators lead the efforts to transform outcomes for students and their families, really.
That's the key thing, is resource, that we're going to bring in more resources, and that it isn't supposed to be on a teacher's extra time, right? Which is the other way that it's done without, right? The resource hub is the perfect way of saying that you're going to bring in more funding, and that there'll be experts there and folks there who can support the community members.
Yeah, and like bringing in nonprofits, people that work with homeless, with poverty, with food insecurity, mental health issues. I mean, all of these are collaborations and partnerships. And there's another part that says they have these guiding pillars, trauma-informed health services, extended learning time, which means kids can be there before school, after school, collaborative leadership practices for educators and administrators to support school climate, and engaging students, families, and community. Again, I can hear, adult ed in there. and to approaching school communities through a positive lens of assessing strengths versus focusing on the challenges. So I see such great potential there for our adult school. That's a win-win. I mean, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, oh, how do we get these adult programs for our parents? We have it.
We have it.
The potential.
We just need to, that's right. We just need to recognize that they exist and that we have it and that this is where their funding should come from. This is a natural fit for them and for them to be resourced by, right? And it's not that all of adult ed would have to be resourced this way. There's, a lot of different potential opportunities for other classes, right? The Pilates class and the Italian class don't necessarily have to be resourced this way, but for sure, the parenting classes do, and the English as a second language class for parents. So that's really
on the
big
website. There is a list of, I think there's 13 schools that have been identified. I might be wrong on that, but they've already listed what schools they are and who their community schools coordinators are. So it's all there. It's
they're moving on it.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good thing. And what California needed, I mean, this is all happening because there's room in the budget for it, right? And it really should be something that's highly prioritized. And once it works, this is the kind of thing that can make a big difference in how safe we are in our state, and the money that we put into other kinds of very expensive options around safety, namely prisons, right? And then all of that money that goes into incarceration can be moved over here.
Yes, absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
That's the idea.
Issues can be addressed. All of that. It's a good thing. Yeah,
it's an absolutely great thing.
Okay.
So that's news. The other news this week, we talked about how Piedmont had a change there in the dance of the superintendents. So now that the superintendents, people have hired their superintendents, Mr. Wayne is in San Francisco, Mr. Duffy is in San Bruno Park, but there are openings in other places. There's a gentleman from Piedmont, his name is Mr. Booker. He moved to San Mateo. And so there is each of those, then they leave behind an opening for an interim to be appointed in the district that they're leaving. And so in the case of Piedmont, a former superintendent from Hayward, who is also a superintendent in Berkeley, Mr. Evans, has taken on the role. He is coming out of retirement, and he's going to be their interim superintendent during the year that Piedmont does the search for their new superintendent. Also in the world of school boards, the folks who are behind and successful in recalling the San Francisco School Board, they now are, they call themselves the San Francisco Guardians, have done a poll of their membership, and they are supporting the folks that the school board members who were appointed by the mayor to take the positions that were recalled. So the three of those three school board members will have the complete support of the group that did the recall. And that's already starting. They're actively raising money for that race in November in San Francisco. And then the other one that will be interesting, I will find out this week, is an agenda item around Northgate.
Yes.
And Walnut Creek, right? Where an area of Walnut Creek is interested in seceding from Mount Diablo University.
Yeah.
And that's been,
fundamentally, it'll just separate people by race. It just
it appears that it will do that. And that is why it's been denied at other levels, but it's going up on its appeal. So the appeal, if the final answer is going to come Wednesday or Thursday this week when they have the final appeal. So that will be, it'll be very interesting to see. Yeah. This is where this is a parent-led effort to to
That's right.
carve out. I mean, this is in the middle of the district, right? This is like
Yes,
carving it out in the middle of the district.
yes, and this has been going on for a while.
Yes,
For years,
for
so,
years.
well, it's
But this
just,
is it. Well, now they'll be all the way up to the top, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
yeah. Okay, are we ready for my brilliant idea
We
about?
are ready now for. Oh well, let me go.
Go ahead.
Let me give a shout out to Miguel Santiago, Assembly Member Miguel Santiago. He had a brilliant idea, and he got some success. His brilliant idea was to have community college in California be free for all full-time students. And that has happened. Community college in California is now free to full-time students. And I would challenge him to make it totally free, but free to full-time students is a great start.
Good start.
That's how the guy comes with the leak and lower the temperature a little for.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
And all right, so that's his brilliant idea. And
yeah,
I know that the classroom justice now people have a brilliant idea. That's our other brilliant idea, is that you please follow Classroom Justice Now to see what they're up to, and like them and join them.
yes, please. I have a personal connection because
Yes,
organized by my son,
yes,
Carlos. Used to
Carlos.
be our
Yes,
production manager here at between
yes.
teachers. Great. Ready for my brilliant
We're ready for
idea?
your brilliant idea.
Well, Contra Costa College, of course, is suffering from low enrollment of students. And my brilliant idea is that the college should encourage and help our teachers, our high school teachers, many of them, oh, maybe even elementary school, have their master's degrees. And that those teachers be able to get their community college credential and could then teach concurrent enrollment classes in their class, at their school where they are. And potentially, because each teacher at a high school has about 150 students. So each one of those teachers brings a lot of students with them. They enroll in Contra Costa College, concurrent enrollment. Then the school becomes definitely a college going culture, and it's just a win-win all over. So that's my brilliant idea. And
I love that brilliant idea, and it really has to be encouraged. It needs to not just be a one-off. I mean, and we've had it before that as a one-off, and we obviously have a middle college on site at the Contra Costa College, but there is no reason to exclude all of your other high school students.
yeah,
Why don't you include them? And if everyone who had a master's was given the opportunity, if we could expand those classes and have them taught on a college level, then there's no reason that they can't be. I mean, all the AP classes, why aren't they?
classes. And what about maybe CTE classes too?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've had them before. So this is not something that hasn't existed. Certainly it has, but what we're saying is it needs to be really broadly accepted, so that it's the
Intentional.
kind of thing
Yes.
that once that every teacher, high school teacher who has a master's would have the opportunity to have their classes be community college credit or not, right? That's sort of what we're thinking here. This is
Yeah.
a brilliant idea.
Okay.
The last thing I wanted to throw out is a brilliant idea that another teacher had. And this is a movie that he is showing today. This is my son, who's been on this program with us before. And today he is teaching, and his final couple of days of summer school. And he's showing a movie documentary called The Neutral Ground. And The Neutral Ground is the story of the removal of Confederate statues from New Orleans very recently.
Yeah.
It won some big awards, the Tribeca Film Festival, and some other film festival awards, because this is a really powerful story, and something everybody needs to understand, to get a picture of what those statues mean to those communities, how different people have looked at the statues and their connection to history, and what that removal, what the process of the removal was, and how to really think about it, and how people are thinking about that removal even now. Right? The people who thought about it first was the state legislature of Alabama, who immediately passed a law saying it could never happen there. But that shows you a lot too, just in the fact that that is
Yeah.
what they did.
That's
right?
a learning experience there. too.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
a lot of room for learning in Alabama in the state legislature, but it's an important thing to say how, because we're talking about when we begin our show, we give the land acknowledgement. This is a part of that experience. Who do you surround yourself with? What does it mean? And even if you leave the statues there, how do you frame the story of why they're there and why they aren't there?
Exactly.
So anyway, for your summer watching pleasure, I recommend that you watch The Neutral Ground. I'm watching it today myself, and I think it's really going to be worth your time.
Absolutely.
So until next time,
Okay.
bye-bye. Oop, I didn't mean to do that.